Hey, what's up everybody? Lawler here, your inside source for all things Rocket League. We ended up having Regional 2 for Europe go down this past weekend. 4 days of back-to-back action in the European region until we finally figured out who the Regional 2 winner was going to be. That is a lot of information to recap. That is a ton of matches. I don't know the exact amount, but it's more than I would like to and more than I can actually remember. So what I'm going to do is in this video, we're going to break it down to a few parts. We're going to start with the upper bracket, get through the kind of major stuff, and we're going to start at the winners quarterfinals because that's when it's the top 8 teams and we get into the specific stuff. We're then going to talk about some of the upsets in the lower bracket. We'll go through the specific matches I think that are notable in the lower bracket, and then we'll get into the rest until we get into the grand final and break it down, that and what it all means and how impossible it's going to make power rankings in the next week. But before we get into that, if you guys enjoyed the content, give it a like as well as hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop those down below. But with that said, let's get straight into the video. So as I mentioned in the intro, there is a lot of matches to cover, and we're going to try to speed that up a little bit. Primarily, the early rounds are as assumed how they're going to result. The high seed normally wins. I'll point out some of those flaws, but we're going to start with winners round 1, 2, and then get into the winners quarterfinals, where we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics, as well as the semis, and then the winner final. In the lower round, we're going to crush through the lower rounds until we get to the quarterfinals, because that's kind of the important stuff, and then we'll move on from there. So we're going to start off in the upper bracket. We got winners round 1, 2, kind of on display for you guys. The big ones to pay attention to: number 1, the Curling Kids. Keeping it close against Wolves, a team that many people are surprised by in their performances. That is a name that we will be paying attention to a little bit earlier because they are giving some teams a kind of fight. I would recommend keeping that name in mind. Match right below that, we've got Dignitas actually losing to Trainhard, the German team that a lot of people have had their eyes on. Dignitas drops extremely early, so unfortunate for them there. Other than that, I mean, things kind of as expected. Singularity dropping to Use Choose Pesce, not a thing that should be happening. I talk about in Singularity numerous times. They either look god tier or they look like garbage. And going to 5 against You Choose Pesce, they should close out those series. There's no excuse for those. A little bit of concern for Singularity. Those are kind of the only really big upsets. I think Redemption beating Landtide, obviously Redemption getting a lot of credit, and Liquid still falling short. But the positive, as we will eventually look into the lower bracket, is the nice thing about these going over the course of a couple days is if they do have a rough start, they can bounce back with double elimination. It just gives them a really tough chance as we move on, because you're talking teams at the very top. If they drop down, like, winning those are pretty much unlikely. So other than that, I would say like Endpoint gives some room to be desired. And against Rix.GG, like, that series I thought had a lot of potential, but it just was underwhelming. But Solary and Team Liquid, I think Solary, now that they have, I think, Tox on their team, have actually had some pretty decent results. Liquid probably looked the best they did in the first couple of days, but it still wasn't like anything special. So a little bit of concern from that. Winners round 2, not much to say. Literally every upper seed won. That's pretty common. That's the way it should be. Europe having some consistency in that regard. So the high seed in every single game did win. The only thing that I really took away from that is Team BDS did not look as convincing as they should. I do think there's a playstyle matchup here that benefits Fadeaway, where BDS wants to appropriate playing fast and aggressive in the NA playstyle, while Fadeaway is a little bit more passive, a little bit more defensive. They welcome that and then go for a counterattack off of a mistake. They put a lot of emphasis on being in the right position and then challenging, rather than we're going to beat you to the ball and try to control the pace. So I do think that matchup for Fadeaway is actually pretty favorable in the way that they approach it, but BDS is just that good. Other than that, the only thing to really pay attention to is Vitality just wasn't looking all that great this past weekend. And Redemption. Redemption is a team that I think gets a lot of respect from me. Again, this is, as I've deemed them, pretty much the Leftovers 2.0. If you guys don't remember the Leftovers with Farah and Snasky, the Leftovers was a team that just kind of fell apart and came back together because they didn't have anybody left to pick up, hence the Leftovers. Redemption is a similar thing with Aslan and Mike Boy and Cash, but they've been playing very well, and this is a consistent playing very well, like top 8 performance kind of well. So really exciting from them there. Eyes on Redemption. Other than that, like I said, everyone in the top kind of closes it out, and that's similar regard except for Team Vitality in the winners quarterfinals. If we take a look at the winners quarterfinals, BDS over Oxygen, Giants over Guild, Top Looks over Galaxy Racer, and Vitality over Queso. Biggest things to note: number 1, even though those first 2 are sweeps in the quarterfinals, the biggest one that I'm noting is that BDS does shut out Oxygen except for 1 goal. Holding Oxygen to 1 goal over 3 games is pretty scary. On the other side of that, Guild is actually starting to look pretty solid. There's a lot of talks about where I should kind of weight Guild's performance. I had some hesitation towards Devo joining into that team, and it seems like it's been pretty dang solid. On the other side of that, with Itachi, Devo's former teammate, going to Giants, it's looked phenomenal. Itachi is slotting in absolutely perfect. Giants look like an easy top 3, top 4 team in Europe right now. They have not skipped a beat. They look absolutely phenomenal. Guild as well was kind of in that battle with Barcelona for me in the fall split. And right now, I would say Guild has definitely come out on the positive. Obviously, all of Barcelona has disbanded and gone elsewhere. Kind of like the plot twist of Europe. But Guild and Devo, I'm honestly surprised. I didn't think Devo was going to do this well with the team. They've been looking pretty good. So shout outs to Guild. A much better performing situation than Scrub. Scrub never really looked comfortable in that team, so I'm glad they found someone that does fit. Out of all these matches, Top Blokes does look like the best, most solid roster out of all of the people in the quarterfinals. They look like the most complete team right now, and it's very exciting to see because if they keep performing like they do, the last grid they ended up winning. This regional, we'll get into the results later, but Top Blokes, if they do not get picked up soon, I'm going to have to sit down and talk to them and be like, all right, guys, there is a reason why you guys are not getting picked up because you're playing too damn well not to. What's the situation? And I will do my best to help out with that if I can, even though I've kind of sworn off doing that. But I do think these kids are very talented. I think Rams is doing a great job as a coach, so I do hope they get picked up. Last quarterfinal, Vitality versus Queso. Queso looked pretty dang hot and ready to go as well. But 3-0 doesn't really tell the story. 2 overtimes. Game 2 is the only one where they shut off Vitality, but Vitality was looking a little bit flat, just enabling a little bit too stuff. This is when we started to see Team Queso, for those that don't know, formerly Magnifico with Greasy, now with VK Salen. If you can feed VK Salen the ball and he's popping off, they look fantastic. A very chaotic team. This is like, for people who watch North America, if you remember Kansas City Pioneers in the fall split, where they're just all over the place, super chaotic. They don't really follow rotations to the normal style, but they get creative and they're really annoying to play against. That's this new Team Queso. They're very frustrating to play against. They don't do the norm. They challenge themselves and create pinches. It's just awkward Rocket League, but it's really entertaining. So Team Queso beating up Renault Vitality, team that normally welcomes the challenge of that chaos, but they just do it better. So surprising there. We then get into the winter semifinals, BDS versus Giants. BDS for a while has had Giants number. The only team that's really got a positive record or had a positive record was Oxygen or Team Queso. Those are the two teams that have performed well against BDS in the past. Giants just can never seem to get over that hurdle. They've done it once in a while, but for the most part, BDS is the outstanding one. So they just get kind of outclassed here. They do keep it somewhat close, though. It does go to 6 with an OT in there. But the hardest thing is stopping BDS from scoring in the late game. They just, once BDS gets warmed up, they look unstoppable. On the other side, Top Blokes versus Queso. Top Blokes is just a better team. They're more grounded. They don't fall under pressure. They work the field well. They're very creative on offense. Top Blokes easily becoming one of my favorite teams in Europe just by watching them play. I'm a huge fan of really high-level Rocket League. I enjoy watching teams excel at things. Top Blokes almost always with their passes into the midfield, the way that they challenge, the way that they work the field is always with intent, and it looks fantastic. So Top Blokes, keep doing what you guys are doing. They don't fall into the chaos. They don't try to beat Queso at their own game. They stay grounded, they work the field, and they do a good job by spreading out because too many people want to commit to things. And if you just enable your one teammate and be okay with him maybe missing, as long as you support him from behind and he misses, at least you'll be there for an opportunity. And as long as your other teammate isn't on you and they are on the other side of the field where they should be, you guys are fine. So Top Blokes does a really good job of breaking down Queso by keeping themselves grounded and positioning well by not all cluttering to one corner or something like V1 was doing last week. So Top Blokes doing a really good job here. And they move on to the winners finals up against BDS. In the winners finals, this is where it gets interesting. Top Blokes historically has had a rough time against teams like BDS, where they do go to the distance and then they get beat out in the overtime. Well, this one does go to 7. It's a very close series, and it does go to overtime in Game 7. I was in my chat watching this during the watch parties, twitch.tv/LAWL stream almost daily, if you guys want to check that out in the description. But as I was talking with chat, I was like, you know what? If Blokes gets a lead, and they hold a lead for, a couple minutes, like if they go up like 3-1, 4-1, it's done. There's nothing they can do. BDS notoriously throughout this entire bracket would go down, tied up, and go back. And I told chat, like, you know what? In this circumstance, if BDS does go down, they'll tie it up, we'll go to overtime. And if we do go to overtime, these are my win conditions. Top Bloke holds the lead, they win. If it goes to overtime, there's no way Top Blokes is winning. It's just not something they would do. Apparently, this was Top Blokes' day because they do it. 3 overtimes, Super close series, really entertaining back and forth. Top Blokes looked like the team this weekend. They looked absolutely stellar. And I think the biggest amazement to me is this keeps BDS out of the grand finals with an upper seed, which I think BDS playing 2 best-of-7s, I don't know anybody that can beat them in both. I just don't think it's a thing. They're too dang good for that to happen. I think if Top Blokes has to replay BDS, they lose that. And we'll get to the lower bracket and talk about that in a bit here. But Top Blokes look like the team to beat in this entire tournament. They just looked on form, and the fact that they win a grid and then immediately turn around and win a regional as well. This is a very good team. I am excited for their future because it shows it's not a fluke. And I think that's a big thing, is too many times we see contrast in different scenarios, but for them to stay persistent and win again immediately after, over the course of a long tournament with gaps and breaks in between, it's not just one day run. A lot of credit to Top Blokes. Put some respect on that name. We then jump down to the lower bracket. So we've got Top Blokes in the grand finals waiting for whoever comes from the lower bracket. We're going to jump all the way into the loser quarterfinals. In losers round 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can kind of see the results here. Some big ones to note, even though Dignitas, Endpoint, Fadeaway, Liquid, and Singularity all drop into that first round right away, Dignitas makes it all the way to losers round 4 right before the quarterfinal. And as for Singularity, they make it all the way to round 3 before dropping to Galaxy Racer. So Dignitas is a team that I talked about being 10th in my power rankings last week. They are a team that I think is trending in the right direction. And even though they falter early, they are able to then win 3 series in a row. One against Oxygen, another one against Endpoint, teams that I also consider pretty solid, depending on what team shows up, and make it all the way into the match right before quarterfinals. I think that's a pretty big deal. I'm still excited about Dignitas and the way they're trending. They are looking better, more dominant, more focused, and more urgent to the ball. It's less disconjointed. A lot of the times when you watch this team, there's a little bit of awkwardness to it, and it seems like they are slowly starting to figure out how they want apparently Jack or Jorius to pressure the ball. Jorius had a freaking phenomenal weekend. He played really, really well, but they're still figuring it out. It's going to take some time, but I do like the way that they're headed. As for Redemption, they also dropped in the first round and they battle all the way into the quarterfinals. That's a big deal. Redemption, another team that I was like, I don't want it to just be a fluke. Can they do it on the big stage? So even though they falter early against Galaxy Racer, because Galaxy Racer I think is still a dang good team, they do make it to the quarterfinals. Something important there. As for Team Liquid is kind of still weird to me. This is the best Team Liquid has looked, I will say, so far. I just don't feel it's I don't know what to say about Team Liquid. This is the best they look, but it's still not, to me, indicative of a good team. Like, they have moments, they have talent, but cohesively together, they just don't look like they're going to be a threat. And it sucks to say, because I really enjoy the players on that team. I really enjoy the organization and what they've done, but I just don't see this team working out. Like, I have expectations of a roster change happening again. Team Liquid will not be going to the World Championship this year. It is a thing that I do not think can happen based upon point gain and stuff. And if they make another roster change, it doesn't matter. So my recommendation, and I'm looking way ahead into the future because this is something that I think needs to happen, is Team Liquid makes another change. They keep Ronicky. They figure out who they want to replace between Speed and Fruity. They pick up a new player and they start planning for 2021. Because I honestly don't see anything positive happening for this team, which is unfortunate. It's a bold statement. Because I do really enjoy the players on this team, and I say that wholeheartedly. I think all the guys are great, but I just think together this is just, it is not meshing, and I don't know how to say it. Maybe they prove me wrong, and I'm okay with it if they do, because I really do love this team, but I just don't see anything positive from Team Liquid right now, and it's unfortunate. Their loss does come from Vitality, so take with that what you will. Vitality was not looking like a good Vitality. That series just wasn't all that great, if I'm being honest. Other than that, Galaxy Racer does drop down. Galaxy Racer I do have some pretty high hopes for. The former Monkeys roster, they end up beating Singularity and move on. They then also beat Vitality in losers round 4, so that was pretty solid there. But again, Vitality was not looking like a good Vitality. For them to get swept by Galaxy Racer, it didn't even look close. It was kind of baffling to just see Vitality like fall over and take it. Maybe Vitality's lack of playing throughout the weeks is finally starting to catch up to them. We will see. On the other side, Redemption and Dignitas do go to 5 in that losers round 4. Really quick recap there. Redemption just playing competitive. They're keeping it close. They're going to be a tough team to beat. They're at this point, to me, kind of a gatekeeper team, where if you want to break into the top 8 or the big leagues, you got to beat Redemption. We now get into the loser quarterfinals. These were kind of the exciting matches that were at the start of the day for the last final day. Queso versus Redemption. Queso, even though they do get bumped down by Top Blokes, do not falter. They look like a team that just was ready to just play upset today. And it was great, honestly. Watching Team Queso be chaotic and all over the place with zero form of consistency and just being like, you know what? We're going to team bump each other. We're going to fly all over the field. And we're going to make it awkward for you and just dominate that way and really play our play style. And they stuck to it. So much so they make it all the way to the grand finals, but that's a bit of a spoiler. On the other side, Giants versus Galaxy Racer. Galaxy Racer just got outclassed. They do beat Giants in the grid, but Giants is looking kind of off that day. Giants came ready to play with their true form today and took out Galaxy Racer with a 4-0 clean sweep. Galaxy Racer did put up a little bit of a fight. 2 OTs, keeping it pretty close. 1-goal games across the board, so it could have went completely different. There was a couple of mistakes that are pretty glaring in that series for Galaxy Racer, so maybe they cleaned that up. Accuracy was a little bit off. There was a lot of times that Matane was hitting crossbar. It was just a little bit off the mark. You put those away, you have a different series. So Galaxy Racer still a good team, keeping it close against a team I consider probably top 3 in the region. We then go to loser semifinals where we got Queso versus Giants, and as I spoiled, Queso wins from here on out, so keep that in mind. We got Queso versus Giants Gaming in a 4-0 clean sweep. Another one that, again, super close. 1-goal games the entire time with 2 overtimes. But Queso's chaos, I find it surprising that it works so well because I do think Itachi has been putting a lot of effort into going for a little bit more mechanical solo plays rather than the pass stuff. And it's been working well. It's forcing teams to respect that. But Queso, because they're so okay with just challenging and throwing everything, they don't get really caught off guard by any of the chaotic stuff that Giants does. And they're just able to handle it. Again, accuracy again for a lot of these teams, that seems to be a problem here. And a kind of ongoing trend. For a lot of the teams that ended up losing, it just felt like their shots weren't really hitting the mark. Like it just wasn't their day, where the things that normally were, they're like, yeah, I normally would put that shot, you know, lasered in. It just didn't hit. So that seemed to be a lot of what was going on for all the teams that end up dropping, where they're just the shots that they normally make just aren't going in, or there are some miraculous saves that happen throughout these series. As you guys are kind of watching the highlights as these videos play, there's been some pretty exciting stuff that went down. I do hope that Psyonix ends up doing like a highlight thing on a regular basis. Maybe that's something you guys want me to do. Maybe I will try and go and find like the top plays from the weekends of these tournaments and try to do just a highlight video. A quick like top 10 or something like that and put those all together. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. We then get into our losers finals, which is BDS versus Queso. And Queso, again, like I mentioned, wins. This was kind of the big upset and the big surprise. As you guys saw in the title, neither Vitality or BDS are in a final. This is the first time in Europe for this season for RLCSX that this has happened, that neither Vitality or BDS has not been in the grand final and won. That is a shock. That is a surprise. It is not something that we really come to expect because of how consistent it has been. But I do think you are starting to see some of these newer teams, now that they are getting exposed more and more and more to the high level play, and they're hungrier because they either aren't signed or don't have the cushy salary, that they're putting in the hard work and effort in the scrims as compared to some of the guys at the top, because Europe historically just does not scrim. So I do think you are starting to see these hungrier teams with younger players that are new to it are really starting to overwhelm, and it's starting to show why the NA system does work with the scrimming 3 hours a night and all that kind of stuff, and why you see the big four, the top four, remain at the top. It's because of the work ethic and what they're putting in. And in a recent interview that I had with some of the European players, they do agree that NA work ethic is better. I sat and talked to Turbo about it and talking about the contrast, and it's a big difference. So maybe this is a kick in the pants. Maybe this is a wake-up call. What I will say is, despite that, I do not have expectation that Vitality and BDS and stuff are going to continue to kind of drop out. Vitality did drop out early. I do not have expectations of that being a regular thing. I still think they're a very good team, and they will bounce back on a very immediate basis. We do have the next week of the grid coming up here very soon on Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm pretty sure. So keep that in mind. It's going to be right around the corner. So quick turnaround time should probably allow these guys to get back into it. Back to the situation at hand, though. BDS versus Team Queso in the losers finals. 2 overtimes, back and forth series. BDS put up a pretty good fight. But the difference maker, man, is those overtimes. Queso able to clutch it out when it matters most. BDS did not look like the true BDS. There was a couple times where they faltered or just like would make weird mistakes, or a touch would be a little bit poor, and that's something that's never really the norm for BDS. I talk about why BDS is so good a lot and what makes them so special, and a lot of it has to do with, one, their boost control. The way they boost manage is absolutely phenomenal, and they never really look pressured. When they're under pressure, when they're in an awkward situation, they just seem relaxed and comfortable. And this is the first time that I don't think they're really able to control the boost game. There was a lot of emphasis put on that by Team Queso, and they just dominated the boost game. They did a really good job of making sure to capitalize on corners and stuff. And if they didn't, they weren't afraid to go for a little bit more chaotic play where you've got a player on defense. Yeah, I'm going to go out of my way to bump and demo, something that you see a lot out of the peeps in North America. So Team Queso trying to create some chaos and doing a good job at it is enough to knock down BDS. But I will say this, BDS did look a little bit lesser than what we've seen of BDS in the past. Now living up to that expectation. We then get into the grand finals, and another time that we are not seeing a bracket reset. It is top blokes winning in 7, going the distance with 4 overtimes. I promise you, if you guys tune into my stream tomorrow for Metal Monday, where we listen to metal and hang out and talk. We will watch this series tomorrow. We will be watching the grand finals, picking it apart and kind of dissecting the specifics of this because there was a lot of exciting things. But there was some high scoring games, and I think that was the difference maker here. Is Top Lokes has found a way to score. The difference maker for me in these series is that the only way Team Queso is winning is if they score at least 5 goals. 4 or 5 goals is pretty common for them to get a victory. The only time that does not come into play is game 1 in an overtime where it's kind of that warm-up match. We're just starting to get into it. Top Lokes was a team that had to sit for numerous best of 7s before they got to play again. So I can understand game 1. You know what? We're not really warmed up into it, but as soon as they get that first game under their belt, overtime, we're ready to go. 4 goals, 4 goals, 4 goals, 5, 3. Like, it's just one after another. So I think that the biggest asset of Top Lokes is their creativity on offense, the ability to work the field, the pass plays, the direct, the solo, whatever it may be. The pass plays that they have from top side down into the middle of the net, they'll be like on the opponent's backboard almost. Jump off, hit it perfectly bottom left corner of the other side of the net, out to the top of the box, or the 18 as it's referred to, and they'll just blast it in. And it's like the pass is perfect. G2 pretty much perfected this for a long time. But Top Lokes knows how to score on EU. It's going very well, but on average, they are scoring 4 goals a game. And if you don't score more than that, like, that's just hard to defend against when you're putting up that many shots. Team Queso's wins. The first game, like I said, was 2-1 in OT. Their game 4, they had to score 5 goals with an OT to win. And then in game 6, 4 goals with an OT to win. So scoring a minimum of 4 goals essentially to win other than a warm-up match, that's insanity. That is not something that you can have the expectation of doing. So I think it's commendable of what Top Lokes is doing. I talk about their dominance back-to-back. If you guys want to kind of go back to what I was talking about that in the upper bracket breakdown, as I do timeline stuff at the bottom for the timestamps. But man, Top Lokes is looking stellar. I hope they keep it up. I think that's been great. I think they're getting the exposure that they're looking for to prove that they're a team worth picking up, and I do hope they get picked up. But seriously, a really good, exciting match. The first time during RLCSX for Europe that neither Vitality or BDS find themselves in the grand finals. Big deal. That is going to wrap it up for this recap. Hopefully you guys enjoy these more long form recaps. It does appease the YouTube algorithm. The longer you guys watch, the retention rate and stuff is more important than anything. So I do appreciate it if you guys have made it this far. It's just, there's a lot of games to cover. I skipped essentially 4 or 5 rounds of matches, probably more than that. If I did do all those, like, we'd be here for an hour legitimately. So shout outs to the editor for breaking this one down and adding the fun clips and the highlights and stuff to make it visually more entertaining. But for you guys also tuning in and watching, if you do enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, all that fun stuff. Any comments, questions, concerns, drop those down below, and we will see you next time. Peace.